thank you. It's a privilege to be here. So you can see on my presentation that so there's Sudan on the left. That's the largest country in Africa, although now it's been split between North Sudan and South Sudan. I was born in the southern part that is less Muslim infiltrated. Mainly the northern part of the Sudan is Muslim. The south is what we call animist. They worship different spirits and things, that sort of thing in the south. And that's where my parents lived for 25 years. And then when I was 3, we moved to Liberia over there on the west coast of Africa, and I lived there for 15 years before moving to Texas via Arkansas. So this is my family. That's my parents. They're on the left. That's when they very first went to Africa and when they retired. So they had 40 years altogether in the continent of Africa. That's my family on the right-hand side, my 4 siblings and my parents and I. That picture actually was taken just a few weeks before my mother went to heaven. So she died of cancer in 2001. The bottom picture is kind of my parents' legacy. That's our family, extended family, all my parents' children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Well, most of us are there in that picture. And that picture was actually taken about 6 months before my father went to heaven. That's him there in front and center at the age of 83. So I come from a great line, a great legacy, and it's really my honor to be able to carry that on. This is just kind of a snippet of my childhood. That's me there as a baby in South Sudan. It's pretty barren and remote there. And then in Liberia, we lived closer to the capital city. We had you can see that's my house in the background. Well, that's my house at the bottom center there. And we had running water and electricity and all those kinds of things. It was really quite an easy life, but it was an honor for me to grow up there. On the upper right there is me and my best friend Marie, and then some high school friends down there in the bottom left, and then my high school graduation, the bottom right, in typical African garb. There's how I graduated. So after graduation, I really had no other option but to come to America and try to become an American, and so I did that and went to college and got married, and this is my family. So my 3 kids on the right, my daughter-in-law and myself there just a few years ago. And it was truly a privilege to be a stay-at-home mom and be able to raise those kids. They're all very good, productive citizens, all living here in the Dallas area now. So I'm very, very proud of them. But the whole time I was doing that, I loved it, and I would not trade that for the world. But the whole time I was doing that, my heart was still there in Africa and in Liberia in particular. So I don't know how many of you know the history of Liberia, but Liberia is very much, they consider themselves to be a child of the United States. Liberia was founded by freed slaves in the mid-1800s. After the blacks were set free here in the United States, the United States purchased some land on the west coast of Africa, right there, and they allowed the blacks to go back and colonize it. It wasn't an American colonization, but they allowed the folks there to basically go back home and colonize that land. It was a great thing. It's a great country. It did cause some unforeseen circumstances. There was always this conflict between the descendants of the freed slaves, who were more affluent and were always in the ruling party of the country, and then the descendants of the indigenous people there, and that caused a conflict that ended up causing a civil war that I'll talk about. So this was the civil war that happened between the two groups, and basically the war was fought by those children. They're on the right-hand side. You can see the information there. There was up to 6,000 of those young boys. They were basically just given a bunch of drugs and some ammunition and told that, if somebody wasn't for you, they were against you, and kill them. So that's how the war took place. For 14 years that went on, and it totally devastated the country in ways that we can't even really fathom. I had left in 1979, so this was 10 years after I left. But that brings us to my friend Eric Wowoh. This is just a short 3-minute video that kind of describes his life, and it could go a lot faster than if I tried to do it. So we'll just watch that real quick.
During the Civil War in Liberia, Africa, 1990, rebels captured young Eric Wowoh. When Eric refused to become a child soldier, he was beaten, tortured, and left to die. Miraculously, Eric escaped and survived while moving between refugee camps across 11 West African nations. In the 12th year of his exile, a friend gave Eric a computer. Eric mastered the computer and began teaching other refugees to use it. In 3 short years, Eric and his fellow refugees built 2 computer schools on the refugee camp and trained over 700 refugees. From one single computer and his relentless humanitarian drive, Eric forged the groundwork for Change Agent Network. Change Agent Network, CAN, is transforming Liberia through education. We have successfully built 14 schools on 3 campuses in 5 counties across Liberia. 1,400 students have graduated from CAN schools and are contributing to the world in big ways. The current presidential press secretary to Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Mr. Jeremy Pia, is a CAN beneficiary. Here's how CAN builds its schools. First, global partners give a one-time high-impact donation to cover building materials and startup costs. Second, local communities donate school land and volunteer their time. Third, members of CAN work with the local community, providing expertise on how to build, operate, and maintain the school. When CAN leaves, the school is locally sustained through community members and parents providing a daily low-fee tuition for their children. CAN needs your help for its current project. The Ebola outbreak shut down the entire Liberian school system. CAN is seeking one-time donations so school can resume in the fall. By raising $100,000, CAN will restore its schools, cover tuition costs of 1,000 students, and most importantly, continue to transform Liberia through education. Over the past 9 years, CAN has raised $1.7 million from ordinary people helping to do big things. This money has transformed the lives of thousands of Liberians. From its start as a single computer, CAN has become an instrument of change in Liberia. Help CAN transform Liberia through education today. Visit canintl.org for more information.
I'll put that website up again at the end. But so that's Eric's basic story. So this is just a picture of the refugee camp, a similar camp to where Eric lived for about 10 years. It doesn't look like a very fun place to live, but that's where he really began to flourish, and he used the gifts that God gave him really in the most profound way possible. It had never happened where an actual school was built on a refugee camp before, and he did that. They actually built the bricks out of the mud right there. They just got some water and created little mud bricks, and they built a little building for the school, for 2 schools actually on the refugee camp. He's got a lot of ingenuity. So that's where he lived for 10 years. And after the war ended in Liberia, he and a group of the guys that worked with him there on the camp all went back home to Liberia with the goal of doing the same thing in Liberia that they had done at the refugee camp. And so they did. They went back to Liberia and they started a computer school there in 2004. And then in 2006, he was brought to Louisiana. That's building one of the schools. This is actually building the school in Liberia that they built with very limited resources. In 2006, he was brought to Louisiana on a refugee resettlement program, and that's where he really started to kind of create Change Agent Network. And this is our mission, to connect undersourced African communities with global partners to launch locally sustainable schools to break the cycle of poverty in Liberia. And then his vision is to actually do that all over the continent of Africa. He strongly believes, and we strongly believe, that really it's intellectual slavery that keeps Africa in its current state. And we believe that education is one of the best ways to beat that and to break that cycle. Let's see what else. So this is the model that was talked about in the video. We get donations from here. The local community is involved, and Changing the Network is involved. So the thing I love about this model is that we really do want to make the schools to be self-sustainable, and they were up until Ebola hit. We charge, when they said they charge the children a daily fee, that runs between 30 and 50 cents a day that we charge children to come to school. And the reason we do that is because most of the village children in Liberia live day to day. They don't get a 2-week paycheck or a monthly paycheck. They go out and sell a few things, or do something, just kind of marginal labor or something, and they make maybe $1 or $2 a day, and so that's how they live. And so taking just a little bit of that to go and pay their school tuition, it empowers them. It gives them a little bit of ownership, and it helps them to appreciate it. And then it's self-sustaining, so that we're not constantly coming back to the American donor or the Western donor and asking for more money. So that's how it works. I think it's brilliant. I think it benefits everybody that's involved, and I'm a huge supporter of it. So that's one of the schools. This is one of the first schools, larger schools that he built with American money. That school goes K through 12. It has a computer school attached to it, as well as a leadership training for older Liberian young men and women. And it also has a guest house attached, so that when we go and visit, anybody who wants to go and visit can go and stay there right on the campus. You're not going and visiting the school for a couple hours and going back and staying in a luxury hotel or anything. You're just right there with the people the whole time you're there, and it really allows for a lot of interaction and really seeing hands-on what's going on day to day. So that's one of the three campuses that we have that include 14 schools. That's one of the graduating classes. And this was all going all well until this hit, something we can all relate to on a very small scale, but it hit Liberia much, much harder than it ever hit Dallas. And like it said in the video, it shut down all the schools. So all of these children were forced to go into quarantine and missed an entire year of school. We have actually successfully opened all of our schools again, but with about half of the enrollment. We were originally at about 3,000 across the 3 schools, and we're now maybe 1,600. And the reason for that is the majority of these kids who can't go back to school were directly affected by Ebola. Either their parents both passed away, one parent died, any kind of farming or anything that they were doing before was not allowed during the quarantine. So all of that was shut down. So they're still, we've kind of almost forgotten about Ebola here in Dallas, but they are still suffering from the ripple effects of that horrible disease. So they're still trying to get their feet back on the ground, and we believe that they will. Liberians are very, very resilient people, and as you can see, they're very joyful people. I just can't wait to go back and see them and hug the little necks and play with them. So that's my passion. That's what I'm going to be going to do here in a couple of weeks. So ways that you can get involved: you can sponsor a student for $25 a month. That will buy their uniform, their books, pay for everything that you need. Or you could sponsor a teacher, and in sponsoring a teacher, that really brings into a whole class of children will be able to come back to school if a teacher is being sponsored. So that's one way you can get involved. Or you can go. We have this program called Travel to Impact, where we encourage folks from here to take a quick trip over there, a week or two, because we believe that actually being there and seeing the work and being with the kids and meeting the staff there that really dedicates their lives to helping these children will make a huge impact, not only on them but on you. We've seen it happen multiple times. As I was growing up in Liberia as a child, I saw it happen over and over again. The reason my house in that picture was so big is because my mom actually ran the guest house. That was a guest house, but it was also where we lived. So we would be the host and hostess for all of the guests that came to Liberia through our mission at the time. And so I saw it happen over and over again. Doctors, nurses, teachers, different people would come over for a week or two, and it literally changed their lives. So if any of you are ever interested in that, I would love to go with you. That's going to be part of my job, is taking trips over and taking groups over there and showing them around my home. So that's the website you can go to if you're interested in doing any of those. I'll leave that up. And that's my presentation. I want to thank you guys for having me come. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.